KLTV sound check. KLTV sound check. KLTV soundcheck, KLTV soundcheck.
Woo. She was loud today. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the BOCC. If you want to join me, we'll rise for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Commissioner Mortensen, the minutes.
I'm wondering where everybody is.
Yeah,
I did review the minutes of the activities last week and I moved to approve those minutes.
okay, we have a motion to approve. Any questions, comments? Hey, seeing none, call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you. I'll run down the consent agenda today. We have 3 call for hearings coming up. Call for hearing for the proposed 6-year transportation improvement plan. This is something we adjust every year. So every year you see a call for hearing on this. So this is set for December 3rd at 9:45 a.m. We have a call for hearing for a 2024 budget amendment to establish a new fund known as Sheriff Equipment Replacement Fund. And that's scheduled for December 10th at 9:30 a.m. And then we have a call for hearing to amend chapter 6.12 of County Code, Animal Control, to consider creating a new chapter 6.13 of County Code for dangerous animals. And that is scheduled for December 10th at 9:45 a.m. Call for bids. We have a call for bids out for unit price guardrail installation and repair project for the installation and repair of guardrail terminals and end treatments. That is scheduled to run through December 10th at 1:30 is when that will be. Call for bid. Supplemental agreement number 2 to the local agency standard consulting agreement with OTAC for the Allender Road Stillwater Creek Fish Passage Project. We're extending the term of the agreement to December 31st, 2025. This is a project that is funded by the state through the Brian Abbott Fish Barrier Removal Board. Contract amendment with Security Solutions Northwest for the installation of additional security cameras and door locking systems at the Hall of Justice. The increase is $79,000 for a total amount of $319,356. So just under 73,000 of that comes from AOC funding, an additional grant, 72,927. So most of that is covered. We do have a bid award to JL Stordahl & Sons for the purchase of our winter snow sand. The winning bid was $58,669.88. 2 contract completion letters. One to J.H. Kelly for the HVAC replacement project for the jail. And one to Accurate Electric for jail camera installation project. Affidavit of posting resume for the month of 2024. And the 2025 open public meeting calendar has been posted. Okay. Resolutions. Resolution adopting and certifying the Cowlitz County Emergency Medical Service District number 1 budget for 2025. And then we haven't seen vouchers for a couple of weeks. So we have vouchers in the amount of $14,170,705.89. That's consent agenda. Any questions, comments?
So, Mr. Chairman, the budget that we're approving for the Cowlitz County Emergency Medical Service District is for a district that serves the Yale Valley up the Lewis River, and it's part of a district that includes North Clark County as well. So it's kind of a cooperative thing, and I think they just passed a special levy to fund that operation.
Morning, Commissioners. Question regarding item number 6.
Ron, is your light on? Thank you.
Item number 6 on your agenda there, over $300,000 for additional security at the Hall of Justice for doors and cameras. Well, we all, or most of us, have security systems in place. So have they also given you a program or procedure of how they're going to utilize those cameras? All of us know that the cameras aren't worth a hoot if you don't have a procedure of whether they detect motion or how they're being used and taken care of, and how they are, what is the procedure and process?
Do you have any answers to that? I think they're just trying to put them in places where they're blind spots and.
Yeah, this is Kathy Funk, Finance Director. I've worked on this project, and so as far as the cameras that we're installing a total of new cameras and existing. We already had some cameras. All of the cameras are actually monitored already by our Sheriff's Department, as well as our security contract that we have at that building. And then the door accesses, we're changing and upgrading the system. We already had some, but we're changing those out. So most of the procedures and processes are already in place for this system.
Very good, but they don't go in without a lot of time in monitoring, et cetera. I can look at my security cameras and spend hours looking at them. So there's a process there of having motion detection and how that's efficient and effective, and yet it captures things that you want to be able to go back to. So I hope there's a good procedure and not just putting cameras in. The human part of it is very important.
Correct.
There also is the often overlooked retention. Have we resolved that?
The retention period for these cameras is a 30-day retention period. And so we have a draft of a proposal. I'm asking for input from, for example, the Sheriff's Office on that, as well as the judicial area.
And that is subject to public records requests also.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other
And
questions?
Can I clarify? We received a few changes to that contract, and so the total increase is actually 103,000 for a total amount of 343,000 for the contract. There were a couple of additional change orders for doors that that are going to be in the Superior Court and District Court area to convert some locks.
Are these change orders something that the courts have asked for, or
Yes.
all of justice has asked
Yes.
for?
Mhm. And like I said, we actually have in funding available 351,000. We're not using all of the funding that's available. We're going to be at 343 right now.
Okay.
So from a process standpoint, how do we handle that? I mean, if we approve the consent agenda, which contract are we approving?
What's the final amount again?
343.
453 is the total contract with all change orders.
Can you tell us a little bit about that last change? Why is that so late? I mean, it is very late, so there must have been something that
There
was
was-
uncovered.
Yeah, there was a delay in getting, for example, there's a change order for, a lot of this work has to happen at night overtime. So there was a bit of a delay in getting all my change orders in. So I finally got those in Friday. And so that's what the difference in the change order is, the contract total.
But the work has already been done, right?
No, this
Oh,
is,
okay.
this is work that's going to be occurring later, some additional work this month. And actually, they can't finish by December 31st. So we are amending the termination date to be January 31st, 2025 as well, because they can't complete everything this month due to the holidays and vacations for their staff. And a lot of this, like I said, is overtime when they're working on the doors, the access doors, they have to do drilling and electrical work. And so to not disrupt the courts, that work is happening at night.
Right, understood. Because of the timeliness, this is why this is on here prematurely?
This is on here to approve them to conduct the work later this month and in January, those change orders.
So in the documents that we received, the supporting documents, they had the $103 amount.
Yeah,
And,
everything.
Yeah, that was a little confusing too. When I looked at that. So what's printed here should be amended to change the amount. And also
Yes.
to mention the contract's being extended for
Till January
till
31st.
the end of January coming in.
Yes. That way we can have a complete finished product.
Trying to think best way to, because there's been quite a few changes from what is on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
I think we should move it to the motion agenda so we can outline all the different changes that are from this.
What's your recommendation for that?
I think that's fine. Because there are some additional changes, we can just pull it off the consent agenda and handle it separately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's
You
really.
want to do that?
Sure, I'll do that. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we do approve today's consent agenda as submitted by staff with the exception of item number 7, which will.
Item number 6.
Oh, yes, I marked the wrong one. Item number 6, pulling item number 6 off for separate consideration.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve and amended the consent agenda. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any, call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll head into motion items and let's take up the contract. So we have down here, it's not, the total contract will now be, is there copies out there for people to see if they need it?
No, but I have one.
Okay, so instead of 319,356, the contract's actually 343,453.
Yes, correct.
And instead of an increase of 79,000, it's actually 103,097.
Correct.
Okay,
And the extension of the amending it from December 31st to end January 31st.
So we're extending it
2025.
1 month to January 2025. And the funds, there is enough, actually, there's more funds set aside for this than there will take to complete it. And a lot of
Correct.
that was AOC grants, right?
Yeah, an additional grant number 2, plus they gave us an additional grant, just an additional funding of 51,327. So there's sufficient funding to cover the entire contract. There's currently 351,576 available.
Okay, have I missed anything that was different? All right.
Where were we on this in June of this year?
In June, we did an amendment. Actually, in July, we did an amendment to amend the contract to change it to 356. Then they received the notice of the grant 2 funding in the summer, I think also like in July. And then they also received an additional 51,000 without a request from the administrative courts of the 51,000. And that was all this summer.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, we began with a need that we all agreed upon. And that need was known at least from June, if not considerably earlier.
Yes.
And subsequent to that, there have been changes that seem like they're based on grant availability. And what bothers me there is the needs should have been superior to any of the grant availability. That is, if we need it, it's up to us to produce it for you. Whether a grant comes in or not shouldn't be. So that puts me in a position where I'm saying, here it is, November 12th, and I'm seeing that the numbers aren't even up to date until an oral explanation. And that kind of growth of additional work and stuff just doesn't fit well with me.
Well, actually, when they originally did the proposal, they gave us a proposal and we didn't have sufficient funds for all the items in the proposal. And so they prioritized. So there were additional items that are in this change order that were in the original proposal. For example, the evidence room, 2 rooms in the basement were on the list as additional items that they made proposals for, but we didn't have sufficient funding. We were anticipating going back and asking for another grant. So they were part of the original walkthrough of the building. There were things like that. There was also a door on the 2nd floor that currently only locks with a key. And that was part of the proposal too. So a lot of these items were actually in the original walkthrough of the building, but because there was insufficient funds, they prioritized the items.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think that's a good explanation, but it's still probably not the way I would recommend we operate, because if it's a need, and I know maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3, the sheriff had some ideas about putting together a building that we'd call the locker for evidence storage and all that. And we were willing then to pay. It turns out that because of what seemed like all kinds of issues, that was abandoned. So I think this is a legitimate thing. So again, it's the process. What bothers me is if we had a need, we should have gone ahead with it, particularly since apparently we have a path identified early on. It shouldn't have been predicated on a grant. That always makes me feel like we're oh, there's free money available. Let's see what else we can do. And we want to avoid that. At least that's my advice.
Except there's no such thing as free money. We know where it comes from.
Exactly,
very
yeah.
much.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
I'll go ahead and make the motion to accept what is basically item 6 with the amendments that have been discussed, which includes an extension of the timeline and an increase such that the total contract cost is $343,453.
Okay. The motion, go ahead, Rob.
I'm finding it interesting talking about the scope of work here and that going to electric locks, and there are certain doors that still need to have a key lock. So you put a electric lock on it, now you got to put a camera on it so you can see who goes in and out and who punches the buttons, et cetera. So can someone tell me who is responsible for the scope of security that this would have written up this scope of work?
It was a combination of our IT director and our facilities with consultation with the courts as well as the sheriff's office that created the original scope of work.
Oh, I disagree with that. The IT is involved in just trying,
Yeah.
the IT is like, you decide you're gonna remodel the bathroom and you hire a contractor. IT is the contractor. You decide, and in this case, I think it's the sheriff's office in consultation or with the PA's office that decides the policy and procedure there. And I don't know if we even play a part there, but IT has no part to play there.
Well, that was my point, really getting to who is executing the security. I presume it's the sheriff's department there, either with their employees or with contractor. So they would be writing the scope as to how they're going to execute it, is what I would think would be a process.
I misunderstood as far as executing.
So does the sheriff's office have a plan of how they execute security for the administration building and how these cameras fit into it? And as I mentioned, the human part, the cameras don't automatically provide security. Security is provided by the human element.
Well, if I can speak to that, referencing the Hall of Justice, I know you mentioned the administration building, this is about the Hall of
Justice,
Hall
yeah,
of
I'm sorry.
Justice. This came, as you mentioned, it was a grant the courts requested from the AOC office in Olympia, and that started as a court security grant. And as part of that, the IT director at the time, Kim Hort, and then Will Toss, head of facilities, kind of headed a committee, and there were stakeholders from the courts, the sheriff's office, prosecutor's office. And I know we did a walkthrough and there were several meetings in terms of defining the scope. It was all geared towards court security. And of course, that includes exterior doors and that sort of thing. But we did do a walkthrough and there's a long wish list of everything we'd like to do. And there was not enough money to do that. So as Ms. Funk mentioned, there was when additional money became available, there was a list of things we were not going to be able to get done initially. And then there was a second phase of that that was also awarded at allowing us to do some more things as well. So the overall ground scheme, if you recall, I think there was a proposal to get the electronic locks on the entire Hall of Justice. And I think that dollar amount, I think, was far exceeded this grant. And I think it was in the $600,000 range, if I remember correctly. So what we're doing now is even a scaled back version of what I guess ideally what was asked for.
So I think the question for you, Sheriff, would be, all these cameras are going to essentially come at some point to an observation point. Is there an office where there's a big, okay, there is apparently, and then who is sitting there and what action would they take under what circumstance. That's what you're asking, isn't it?
Correct, correct. The cameras don't do a bit of security by
Yeah,
themselves.
well, and one thing about the cameras, like mentioned, that those, in terms of motion detectors, that they run 24/7 and they're recorded and retained for 30 days. So if there's an event, we can go back and search that and find that. In terms of people observing or watching these, one of the phases that's coming up is having screens there at the front hall or front entrance to the Hall of Justice so the security folks can be observing those. Also, I think it's a deterrent. People come in the door and you see a screen up there that say, oh, there's cameras everywhere. I can't go anywhere and not be on camera. There's part of that. We also have folks in one of our offices, they do have it up on a screen, but that they're not watching it. That's not their only assigned duty.
So if there is an event that security is breached, who addresses that?
Well, we're talking about the contract for the new security firm. There's a security firm on site at the Hall of Justice that screens people coming in. We also have a deputy there every day during court hours serving that. And they're connected by radio. So if something occurs, it'd go out on the radio. And we'd have not only the staff, the armed security folks, we have one deputy there. We also have, generally, we have additional staff in our office available to respond.
I think a
But
key,
ultimately, doesn't it go to you, the sheriff? Aren't you ultimately the person responsible for security for the Hall of Justice for us in the county?
In short, yes. Yeah.
Yes,
When
okay.
yeah.
And so an interesting one, you mentioned the evidence room and security on it. We've found in society, very interestingly, that when things happen, evidence seems to disappear some way or another. So again, you're responsible for evidence being retained as part of this security program, correct?
Retained, preserved, secured.
Very good. Thank you.
there is an issue of timeliness for the example that was just discussed, reviewing reviewing the video for the past month or however long. That works. But one of the concerns, and I may be out to lunch here, is people coming into the building with an instant evil intent. Now, we got the front door handled that. And if they try to do any strong arm, it'll be known. But strong arming an employee coming from the backside or anything like that. So I would think we want, kind of like what you were suggesting, out front or wherever the hired security is, they have an obligation to give it a frequent scan. And then in terms of retention, I'm along those lines, I'm thinking, what is it I would do if I had, it's always difficult to discuss situations in public when you don't want to plant any ideas, but I think we might want to be careful on the PRR, not just releasing the video of people coming in and out. That's a lot of personal information that I think there has to be a little more work done there, but that would be the PA's office that has to tackle that.
And that's under discussion as well.
Oh, is it?
The length of
Okay.
retention, and also, once a public records request is made, that also triggers a longer retention for the records as well. But I, to your point, yes, in short, the chain's only as strong as its weakest link, and
Okay.
we don't
thank
want
you.
to
Yeah.
talk about what those weak links are, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Pleasure.
This is kind of off the thing, but it's toward you, or anybody, everybody, actually. Everybody's concerned about their safety in this building and any other federal or county buildings. And we do have very nice gentlemen that do patrol. One's behind
Flo,
us.
your voice doesn't come in unless you're looking at the
Okay.
microphone.
We have very nice gentlemen that do patrol, but I was just wondering, what if there was an event? What kind of an authority do these very nice gentlemen have? Do they have the authority that a policeman would have? Such as you can arrest somebody for whatever they've done, or they just are there to call a police person?
No, the armed security, they don't really have any additional authority beyond what a citizen does. Though they're hired to exercise that authority. They don't have the authority to arrest, but they can actually, as any citizen can, intervene in a violent, dangerous situation, prevent assault, damage to property, and they can detain people. Citizens can as well if something were to occur, and they are trained and well equipped to do so, more so than the average citizen, but their legal authority does not exceed that.
Okay, so they can't make an arrest in case like somebody pulls a gun and shoots, not that they would, because you aren't allowed to have a gun in here. However, I'm just wondering what authority they had, but
And-
thank you very much. In other words, not much.
Is there a distinction between the folks at the entrance of the Hall of Justice and the gentleman in the back of the room?
Excuse me, is there a difference between?
The capabilities, implementation, can this gentleman do the very same thing that all the folks at the Hall of Justice can do equally across the board?
Yes, yep.
So he can arrest somebody.
He can detain, like the arrest.
Detain, yeah,
like
yeah.
detain
Arrest is
somebody.
more formal.
Yeah, detain somebody if they're a danger to themselves or others.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
I think we have to be careful about diminishing the value of the private security. Their eyes on the grounds for those of us that are working here and at the Hall of Justice. And they do make a huge difference. Last week, for example, we had the building filled with voters anxious about the deadline approaching, and they hadn't gotten their ballots in. And there were an awful lot of people here. And having people with uniforms kept the potential conflict really to a minimum, as opposed to a couple of years ago when we did not have private security available. Just to be that presence, it has made a huge difference. So I appreciate that. And an appropriate use of resources rather than having uniformed commissioned officers staying here instead of out on the streets, enforcing the more serious crimes. So it's been a good, I think, anyway, it's been a good development that makes our facilities much more secure.
Okay, I got to step in for just a minute here. You notice on the agenda, we had a public hearing at 9:30, and the reason I've let that go is because that's been canceled. We haven't got the required numbers we need from the assessor yet to hold this hearing. So I'm just making an announcement that this public hearing that was scheduled at 9:30 is canceled and will be rescheduled.
Rescheduled for November 26th.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I agree with you, Dennis, wholeheartedly. And I actually would like to have them have perhaps maybe more authority than they have, only because I think that there are times in our community that people are very aggressive. And when you say detain them, that would be physical if need be, correct?
That's correct. And for
Okay.
example, at your stores, the loss prevention folks at some of the big box stores and everything, they can exercise authority and detain people for shoplifting, handcuff them and detain them until law enforcement gets there. And then the law enforcement makes a decision whether to do a formal arrest and charge them with a crime. But they can, as like I said, citizens can detain people too if they're a danger to themselves, others, property. You have a right to stop somebody from doing something illegal.
However, my knowledge of the stores and their ability to do that versus their willingness to detain and prosecute, it's not happening. And I was hoping that it definitely would happen here if we had a problem, because again, people are more and more volatile than they used to be. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this? I'd entertain a motion.
I think
I think I made the motion.
Oh, you did. Sorry. We got caught up in conversation. Okay. If there's nothing else, then we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now, speaking of security services, this went out for bid. I was actually surprised how many bids came in. And so evidently you'll talk about the one we want to award.
Yes, this process started, I think, last summer, started developing a request for proposals. My understanding, there were 18 companies downloaded the information and 9 companies submitted formal bids. So a committee was formed with Ms. Funk Baxter, Ashley Clausen from purchasing, Shelley Pierce with risk, myself, and Chief Administrative Deputy Jordan Spencer, who oversees our security program, and we reviewed the 9 finalists, and we narrowed it down to 4. And we went to, after rating them, we had the 4 companies do interviews with us, and we had a grading scale for that. And from that process, the one that we selected was actually a company has local roots here. It's Northwest Enforcement. They're based in Portland, but they purchased Columbia Security here a few years ago. So they maintain a presence in an office in Cowlitz County. They have 30 full-time employees currently and other contracts and an additional part-time and on-call staff as well. So from our various evaluations of everyone, all the companies and the matrix we were looking for, we selected this company.
And I think Ashley's online in case there's any questions from procurement standpoint.
And previously, this is one contract for Hall of Justice and here? Because previously we had 2, and I know we were trying to get that.
That's correct. Yeah, this is for 6 full-time armed security guards, 1 here, and 3 at the Hall of Justice, 1 at the jail, and 1 at the juvenile center. And just as a note, there is a separate contract for courier service with the existing Phoenix Protective Corporation that runs through June. So that's a separate contract for that.
Out of curiosity, Kathy, I'm trying to remember, I think, was this the low bid or close to it? If I remember right, there was wasn't there quite a span?
Well, I can say the low bid was 497. The high was, I think, over 800,000 amongst the 9 companies. Most of them were kind of bunched.
This wasn't the lowest bid, but
Okay.
considered the best value based upon the answers and the interviews.
Gotcha. Perfect. Okay. Any questions, gentlemen? Okay. Okay, Brian.
So just a little clarification, what is the duration of this contract?
This is a total of 5-year, the ability to have 5 years, but it's 1-year contract with the ability to have 4 additional years, 1-year contracts.
Okay, this is a 1-year duration for $542,000.
That's the total for Ashley. Do you have Ashley, are you on? Could you answer that question?
Yes, good morning. Ashley Clausen, Purchasing Services. The duration of the contract is going to be for 1 calendar year, with the option to increase for 4 years after that.
Okay, very good. And I presume liability insurance, liability for these individuals is a significant part of that contract. It isn't just for labor or people. There's a liability that people inherit. We, the citizens, used to rely on the Good Samaritan. I don't know if that counts anymore. So is liability included in this contract, or do we provide some liability?
And if Ashley, she can speak to that, there is.
Yeah, the insurance requirements will include liability that has been reviewed by our local risk manager as well as the state risk pool.
And this $542,000 pays for liability to some entity, correct?
Yes, that includes all of their insurance.
Okay, very good. That's an important part. And thirdly, I heard Sheriff say 6 full-time people, 542,000 for a 1 year is less than $50,000 a month, et cetera. That covers 6 full-time people? Okay, very good. Thank you.
So for my own edification, maybe this is an Ashley question. What does it mean to have an option to renew? There must be specific conditions who gets bound by there? Like the option to renew suggests to me that we do not go out for an RFP at the end of the year. So that binds us. What binds the company?
So the contract will be set up for a 1-year term, and that option to renew, the county can look at that and say, if everything is going well, we have the right to say, hey, we want another year. If not, we do not have to extend for another year, and then we can go out for RFP.
Right, but how is that any different than doing an RFP at the end of a year? Other
That
than
just-
the mechanics inside here, it wastes a lot of time to do an RFP. But other than that, so are they constrained to how much of a cost escalation there is?
Yes, there will be the increase based upon CPI in the initial agreement. And
Okay,
there's
thank you.
really no change. It's paperwork. If we were to do a 2-year contract and we decided we didn't want to go forward, that would include termination of that contract. So this just keeps us from having to do that. We have the option to go out for RFP if we'd like.
And like most contracts, we have a 90-day termination clause in case things go wildly crazy.
Our termination is actually not limited by days. It is just an across the board termination.
Would you repeat that, please?
Our termination clause is not limited by the number of days. We can terminate the contract at any time.
It's
At
not,
any time.
it's not limited by days. We can terminate it tomorrow if you wanted to.
Terminate tomorrow, but we need to give them 90 days, 180 days.
Oh, yes. I believe it is a 30-day termination. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
So I'm sorry, and that number is a month?
I believe so.
No, okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's up to me. Mr. Chairman, I move that we do award a bid to Northwest Enforcement for armed security guard services in the total amount of $542,007.47.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Check for any hands or anything else. Not seeing any. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Sheriff. We have another motion item. I'm assuming Bailey, you'll take this from the Commissioner's office.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bailey Silva, Public Records Officer. I'm here today to request approval to rescind the previous public records policy and adopt the new public records policy. We revamped our public records process a year ago, so the majority of the changes reflected in this policy are just to reflect those change in processes. The only other changes are the addition of section 2.2 and 2.3, and I can go over those if you'd like. So section 2.2 is a waiver of fees. So anything that costs under $2 for us to produce to a requester would be waived on the basis that the expense of processing that $2 would exceed the cost of providing those records. And that cost is determined based upon the type or how they want their records provided to them, which can differ. They might want printed pages or an electronic transfer. of records, and the county has adopted statutory fees, so that's all based upon those fees. The only thing I want to mention and keep in mind is that the inspection of public records remains free, and I worked with IT to create a kiosk in the commissioner's office that I actually have a process in place where if someone wants to inspect those records, regardless of how many pages that request may be, or however many records that request may be, they can review those records in our office for free, despite that waiver of fees section. And then the second section that we added was 2.3, which is identifying multiple and helping multiple and frequent requesters. So this will just allow us to process requests in the order that allows the greatest number of requesters to receive the greatest number of requests. This year, we've seen an increase in multiple and frequent requesters. So it just allows, if I have 100 requests from one individual, I'm able to do installments for those, provide records to them as soon as I can. But that doesn't mean that if another requester provides a request, I have to queue them behind 100 of one individual making a request. And it just makes sure that we can ensure that we're providing the greatest number of requests to be fulfilled.
Mechanical question. So if I wanted to take advantage of your office and take a look at stuff, when I say take a look at stuff, that stuff is something that I will have submitted for a PRR. I just don't go in there and start to take a look at everybody's email or anything like that.
Yeah, you still have to submit a request. The documents still have to be reviewed, but then I could put them on the computer for you to look at and decide, if you wanted, after looking at 100 pages, you may only want 10 of those pages printed.
Got it. And along those lines, for the public, there'll always be the suspicion that the data is being redacted for a political purpose or something of that kind. Can you describe who does the redacted and anything along those lines?
Yeah, so Shani and I do redacting for all the departments besides
Who's
the
Shani?
Shani's the public records analyst in the commissioner's office.
Okay.
And we're required to provide a redaction log. So if redactions are made to a record, there's an RCW associated with that redaction that explains why that redaction was made or what gave us the authority to redact that certain information.
So how do you know what to redact?
We have to review each individual record carefully. And, if we see a social security number, we need to reference it to, we have like a little cheat sheet, the Cowlitz County exemption key, and we have a code on there and that'll associate it to the RCW. So then that is provided to the requester. So it's a lot of reviewing everything and making sure that, we're not releasing someone's social security number, for example.
What are some of the other examples of information that is legal to redact from a public record?
Another big one is attorney-client privilege in the commissioner's office, for example. It's attorney-client privilege. Not a lot of redactions are made. It's just dependent upon what that individual wants access to. An employee's birthday, but only their day and year are redacted. So, sorry, their month and year. We do release the day that the individual was born. So it's very specific and it totally is just dependent upon the request and the records that we have.
So the resolution that we are rescinding was adopted in 2020. And in the last several years, there have been a tremendous amount of changes in that public records law. I know you've shared with us in workshops the number of additional trainings that the state has provided to workers. In addition, you have to compile a list of how much time is spent on all the various different kinds of records requests. So the state's monitoring the total amount of staff time, which is considerable. We're talking about 2 employees. We didn't used to have two full-time right now. Plus there are other departments that have their own public records requests. So the sheriff, I think, they do their own redactions, and the courts do have their own system for handling that. But it is a pretty expensive program, and I appreciate the fact that you're making it possible to avoid one person clogging up the system so nobody else can get access. I think that's pretty very responsible, and it helps us respond to the law that says the documents need to be available. But it's a common sense approach to say one person can't dominate all of staff time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I only have very good things to say about how you're handling all of this. So not to embarrass you, make you blush, I'll skip that and I'll bring up a topic that was a little bit awkward. Last week, was it? There was some statement by a citizen of non-compliant attempt to get a public record. And I know you were on, and without too much detail, you looked into that?
Yes, we responded to all three of those public records requests that that individual was referring to.
I'm sorry?
We had responded to all three of the public records requests that that individual was referencing.
Did you get an idea what the complaint was specifically?
Each of his requests were actually a little bit different. One of them, we requested clarification, and, you know, sometimes based on the language of the request, we're able to proceed forward without the clarification. In this instance, we asked for clarification and we did not receive any from the requester, so we were not able to produce him records in response to that. So, you know, I'm not quite sure if that's part of his complaint. Yeah, and the other two we did provide records to the individual.
So a request like, send me everything I'm interested in, period, that isn't a good request?
Most likely not. I don't know what you're interested in.
Thank you.
Sorry, I talk a lot. Just for safety's sake, do you keep an original that I know that you go through and redact, but do you keep an original copy so that you know what was redacted?
Oh yeah, we never give someone an original. We always have the original, and then directly underneath it is the redacted version, and then the requester only sees the redacted version.
Okay, so you do keep the original. Okay, thank you.
I'm just chuckling a little bit because I don't know what it would mean if we only kept a redacted version. So, would you like a motion, Mr. Chairman? I move that we approve the request to rescind resolution 20-090 dated 11/3/2020 and adopting an updated public records policy.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Any other questions on that? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you, Bailey.
Thank you.
I do want to add a little bit, just in general, we've taken a lot of pride in this county on the quality of certainly our elections department, and I take similar pride in our public records request. It's excellent.
Yeah, since taking that on, she's done very well with it, and the turnaround times have dramatically decreased and done much better. I'll just announce next Tuesday and Wednesday, we have no meetings. We're down in Vancouver for a Washington State Association of Counties deal. So next Tuesday and Wednesday, you don't get to see our smiling faces. Other than that, we'll open it up for any comments.
Okay, so I briefly want to touch on a little bit of history and then go on to what the next thing's going to be here for me. So we know that with the mental health tax has now officially been undone. I want to remind you that I think it was August 13th. I actually have the date here, Commissioner Weber, when you kind of gave us a little information about how Bud Clary had taken a chunk of their business away from here, a sizable chunk. It was $1 million to the county, is what you'd said.
Which turned out to be incorrect.
Oh yeah, how much was it then?
That wasn't happening, so.
They didn't move their business either? Well, darn all the luck.
I
Well,
heard quite right away from.
oh yeah, I
from
made
management that,
I got the KLTV clip and put it right on Facebook. I thought that was insane. So that turns out to not be true then.
Right.
Wow, I got to tell you right
It-
now.
Kathy did some work for us on that, why the sales tax was down. And actually the sales tax from retail type stuff was still strong. We had lost some from construction and development of commercial business coming in.
the primarily the box plant
Yeah.
got built, and during the year it was built, we got huge amounts of sales tax. That bumped the totals out. And then, of course, they're not still building it. They got it built. So that revenue went down. That ended up
Yeah.
being the huge difference.
That was the impact. The retail, the sales tax we get from retail activity remains.
Well, gosh darn, that was going to be I really had this shining moment not too long ago where I thought, wow, Dennis and we actually came to an agreement. I mean, we were actually fundamentally, together there for a minute.
Just as a very quick interruption, imagine if we had gone and built the Millennium Bulk Terminal and the Northwest Innovations facility. Thinking of sales tax only.
The one thing that you keep mentioning, and I plan to, I've used this example that you say, is that we're the same area as Singapore. And so when I mention that to people, they're like, what's Singapore? It's like they don't really
It's not
know.
the same area. It's 1/10 the area.
Oh, really? Oh,
It's like
geez, even
100
worse than
square
I thought.
miles versus 1,100.
Well, anyway, my wife has spent time in Singapore. And so I asked her this morning about that. I said, are there poor people there? And she's like, no, the Singapore people are, they're all live rich, man. And you think about, we have so much more, like you say. Anyway, this is getting off the topic of where I was going because now my whole plan has gone up in the air. Darn all the luck. I thought that Bud Clary thing was really going to be ammo for me. Darn. I was taking you as my solid source on everything.
Anything else?
Just a quick observation for security last week, as was mentioned during the voting. So I came on up and I was looking for the little tags that said, I have voted. I hadn't seen anyone wearing those little tags. And so I checked in with the security guy and he had bowl there of those that you can stick on and say, I voted. And I was thinking, we really missed a great opportunity by not having those be more visible, because that's an automatic incentive and reminder for people in the community. If you're wearing those, saying I voted, one proudly, but also basically encouraging others to vote.
I never imagined you'd be involved in advertising.
We stand up for the privilege of having the freedoms we have in this country that don't come free.
Anything else? We were busy last week. A lot of people were in. It was good to see people coming in and doing the turnout, I think, was pretty strong and
And
Cowlitz
I
County, I
think,
think, did their part.
I think currently the curing process is underway. Those ballots that were challenged, people are given an opportunity if it's because of an incorrect signature or other details that they can cure. They can't change their vote. They can just cure whatever the identification is.
Right.
And so towards the end of this month, we'll have the final canvassing board that'll approve the final amounts, but doesn't look like we're having any write-ins this year. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's nice.
The public may not know exactly what the canvassing board is. Our chairman will be on the board. Did you want to just tell them quickly how interesting that is?
Well, they go, elections goes through, as Commissioner Weber was alluding to here, goes through a real process to, if signatures don't quite match up, they do everything they can to try and cure the ballot so they can count it. And the ones that are left over that are just maybe the postmark is not right, or there's just some differences that they can't cure, they run those things through the canvassing board for one more set of eyes. And the canvassing board is, I think there's 4 of us, 3 of us. And we can take a look at each individual situation and override it or not override it. But normally we don't have a ton of those because they do a really good job of trying to cure everything before it ever gets to us. But your elections go through election, it gets counted. Anything they can cure, they cure, and then it goes to a canvassing board for one more time to take a look at it and see what you want to do. So that's what the canvassing board does.
Including in the canvassing board is you will get the envelope of a mailed ballot that is dated beyond the 8 p.m. deadline. And the elections can't throw that away, but the canvassing board can.
Right. But what I've seen ballots from previous elections people use, so they just can't throw those away. It has to go through canvassing board for the official decision on it, even though you would think, well, it's not even this election, but they do look at everything. They do.
And it's the chairman of the board, the prosecuting attorney's office,
Right.
often the PA himself.
And the auditor.
The auditor.
The auditor is the other one.
Yeah.
So
So that's the,
You're right,
that's
it
the
is
3.
3.
Yeah, the 3 is prosecuting attorney, chairman of BOCC, and the auditor, and that's the 3. And we can designate people if we want, but those are the 3.
I've had occasion to substitute for the chair a couple of occasions. And it's been interesting. People's signatures do change over time, and the county keeps the record of your signature that you used when you filed, when you registered to vote. And so based on training that staff and the canvassing board has been given by the state patrol on identifying signatures, we have a certain discretion to adjust if it follows certain guidelines that we know about. The 2 of us have to agree if that signature is going to be accepted, if staff had a question about it. And it is amazing with younger voters who've not been taught signatures. They print or they scribble. No, and it's kind of amazing. If the scribble matches what's on the record for their original registration, then they do it. But oftentimes they'll have their name. If it doesn't match, we have to do some judgment. They get notified. They have a chance to verify, get the signature cleared up. And then they'll keep track of more recent signature examples. So we don't have to go through that again. We also catch people signing their own names to 2 ballots. They forget. So family dynamics, spouses sometimes help each other out, and sometimes they get the wrong signatures. Sometimes they forge the signature of their spouse, but it's in their handwriting and you can tell. I mean, it's just an interesting process. If they're doing it legally, we want them to be able to vote. If not, they get referred to the prosecutor. And then they decide whether to do the prosecution. Pretty interesting process.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna just kind of chime in and say that's all pretty true. I did a stack of these one time and went around to people to cure their ballot. And in almost every case, it was one of the spouses signed for the other one. It's not a big deal. You're there and they feel like they're on the spot and they say, hey, you're not gonna go to jail. Just cure your ballot, And
Right.
but one house I went to, they were shocked to see me and the guy didn't want to talk to me at all. And he wouldn't cure his ballot. I went back and turned him into the elections office.
Yeah.
I don't ever know what happened to him, but he wasn't glad when I said, hey, I wanted to, what, did you make this vote, or something like that? And it's like, oh, shocked, what, you found me?
Yeah. But what Dennis said, they do everything they can down there. They want to count your ballot.
Yeah.
They're not there to.
We're so lucky that we can have confidence in that department, of all the departments especially, and I you guys know, I spent a lot of time around there as a citizen and man, I just no complaints. They do everything they can, that's for sure.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, one more time. We won't be here next Tuesday or Wednesday. So I don't know what you're gonna do with yourself. You all get some time off. But we appreciate your participation as always, and we will adjourn. Thank you.